RugbyRenegade.com, the #1 online strength and conditioning program for rugby. Are you ready to get bigger, stronger, fitter, and faster and dominate your opposition? Welcome to the Rugby Renegade Podcast, where we build machines.
Hello and welcome to the Rugby Renegade Podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by Pro Athlete Supplementation. Check them out at pas-nutrition.co.uk for all your supplementation needs. And don't forget that subscribers to the Rugby Renegade program get a 40% discount on retail prices. Yes, welcome back to episode 54 of the Rugby Renegade Podcast. My name is Jamie Bain, and today, slightly different interview. Not just a strength and conditioning coach or a nutritionist, that type of stuff we do regularly. It'll be a bit more interesting for front row players, especially hookers, because we interview Dan Richmond, who is an expert Lineout throwing coach. Also, a very experienced player in his own right. He spent 9 years at Northampton Saints when they were, a very successful team. And I coached him at Bedford, so it's great to have someone on that I've coached and chat to him about what he's doing now. Since his playing career, he's been coaching at the Premiership level with Worcester, Wasps, Sale, and he spent a good few years at Sale. And also specialist throwing, he's worked with Argentina, the Pumas. And he's really gone into researching the throwing movement and looking at weaknesses of hookers. And how they can improve those to improve their line-out throwing. So it's really in-depth chat into that. We touch on scrummaging and general front row play as well, and a few other bits. But hopefully, especially if you're a hooker, I'm sure you'll get a lot out from this. So give it a listen and let us know what you think. Hi Dan, welcome to the Rugby Renegade Podcast. Great to have you on. Why don't we start by just telling us a little bit about your background, your playing career and your coaching career, and what you're up to at the minute.
Yeah, I started at Northampton Saints in their first academy, and I was there for 9 seasons, and then moved over to Bedford Blues, where I had 4 really enjoyable seasons. And that time at Bedford, I made the transition into coaching. So I was coaching full-time at a local school, and then looking for opportunities transitioning out of playing into coaching. And I was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to work with England under-18s, working specifically with their line-out throwers. And the role grew from there, where I approached a couple of the Premiership clubs, and I got roles to work with their throwers at Sale Sharks and Worcester Warriors. And once you're in that environment, I was fortunate enough to have some ideas around the scrum, because at that time the new scrum engagement sequence was coming in with the crowd-defined set, and an opportunity grew at Sale Sharks, and I ended up coaching the line-out throwing, assisting with the forwards, and having responsibility for coaching the scrum. And from those opportunities and relationships, I was invited out to Argentina, where I worked with Freebie with my time at Worcester, and that's how I got involved with working with the national team in the 2015 World Cup.
Yeah, that's cool. And obviously, being a hooker, you've got that passion for throwing and lineouts. And I know a lot of what you're currently working on is, improving whether it's skills or the physical side in terms of the S&C approach for hookers. So I thought it'd be a good way to kind of start on what you've kind of highlighted as the weakness you see in some of the throwers that's letting down their technical ability. And then we'll go on to sort of how they can improve it. So what are the kind of weaknesses or things that you kind of look out for when you're looking at a thrower?
Yeah, I think probably one of the common areas I focus on is the hand placement on the ball. So often players teach themselves how to throw, and they maybe watch other players on the telly or so on, and they try and copy that. So there's some fundamental positions where to place your hands on the ball to achieve a spiral, and I talk about your dominant hand being your power hand, and You're looking to maximise your hand contact on the ball with your power hand. That's going to give you maximum grip. And then when you've got maximum grip with your power hand, you've then got to be able to balance that power and transfer it in the direction you want. So your other hand, as I name it, the guide hand, needs to be positioned to control and direct the power towards the target. So hand placement is always a big one. And I'd probably say the other common area to improve is in your posture. So when players take the ball up in their ready position, they've actually got their lower back is fixed in extension. So they're sticking their backsides out. So they've got an anterior pelvic tilt, and that is going to lock up your lower back as you're going through your throwing movement and can cause challenges with your moving on the ball. So having your pelvis in neutral, as you know, is the best way to perform any athletic movement, and that then has a positive impact on how your hands release the ball.
Yeah, and so moving forward, we'll talk first mainly, I guess, about sort of skills and drills that you've used to kind of get people to focus on that for, some of our listeners who are throwers who want to improve it. What sort of drills can you use? Obviously, I guess it's difficult to explain just over a podcast, but if there's any sort of little easy wins you can offer to some of our athletes, that'd be great.
Yeah, definitely. I think when you're exploring your hand placement on the ball, a good tip to use is to play around with a smaller size rugby ball, because you're naturally going to have an increase in contact on the ball just by the size of the ball. But a real key to producing that spiral is the work of your guide hand. And a common practice now as throwing coaches and professional players is they incorporate the thumb of their guide hand a lot more. So to describe it, your power hand, which is your dominant hand, has got good hand contact on the ball, and you're looking to roll through the ball like you see in the NFL quarterbacks throwing. And your guide hand, we're looking at your thumb to push through the ball. So using a small ball really helps to make it a little bit easier to find that spiral, and then you can transfer it to your match size ball.
That's cool. Good tip there. And then in terms of the posture and things like that, what can you do, or what cues can you use to help people get that right posture?
Yeah, again, I think going into the gym and working on your pelvic control is the fundamental way to address that, so that you can stand with your almost like your waistband parallel to the ground is a good indicator that you're in that neutral position. And again, as a coach, we like to challenge that. So we would put a player on an unstable position, so maybe like a wobble board or a cushion and so on, to help you. But one tip I'd probably say is if you raise your toes, so for example, if you've got a small platform, maybe like a couple of centimeters high, or even like a plate, in the gym, and you toes on that plate and your heels are on that's going to help you to find that neutral pelvis position. So that's a way to, again, we want to help our players to identify the feeling of being in the right position, and then we start to challenge it, that they have to replicate that within the drills when they get tired and so on.
Yeah, that's cool. And then sort of moving forward, you mentioned in the gym there, what sort of exercise or what sort of muscles are we looking at to work, whether it's mobility or strength and the posture type stuff?
Yeah, the muscle groups we're obviously looking at around like your glutes, your lower abs, and when we go through producing the throwing movement and throwing long, your upper abs become really important. as well as as we want to stretch as the ball goes behind your head, and then you want them to snap forward. And finally, the triceps play a big part in producing power. And to achieve a fluid movement, again, it's the balance between strength, power, and mobility. So your shoulder mobility is important, and an indicator that you may be struggling with your upper body mobility around maybe like tightness around your lats or your chest is as you're recoiling the ball behind your head. If you feel your elbows sort of splay out, that's an indication that there might be tightness in the muscles. And also if your chin drops on its chest as the ball behind your head in the recoil. So the recoil position really helps to tell us a lot as coaches, indicators of players' mobility and so on. And when you couple that with identifying the right hand placement, you get those positive visual cues that the elbows don't splay out too far and the chin stays in a neutral position.
Yeah, all good tips. Now, in terms of actually practicing throwing, I'm sure some of the hookers listening would be interested in what's your approach. I guess everyone's different, but what would you recommend to a young player in terms of, how frequent, how much volume to get in with practicing their throwing?
Yeah, I think it's probably really important to say it's got to be purposeful practice. It's got to be accurate practice. Otherwise, you're starting to maybe train those bad habits. So I think one tip would be it's important to train with other people, and by understanding the visuals of the right techniques of what you're looking for, then you can buddy up with someone and they can help you to find, identify when you're performing the correct movements, and then you can become more aware of what that feels like. But you're going to be looking around 50 quality throws a day at least. So you're looking around that maybe sort of like 250, 300 throws a week, so that you're developing that muscle memory, that rhythm of how you're going to perform your movements. And then once you've got that, when you then take that into working with a line out, you've got an understanding of your rhythm, and then when you're starting to work with the players of different line-out moves and timing and so on, the only variable you've got to add in is to when you start your movement.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you started with the it being purposeful. Often some people might just throw out a number and then players will just listen to that and go off and just throw 50 terrible balls. But yeah, it's really glad you highlighted that point. Let's move outwards in the scrum a little bit into the props and scrummaging in general. What are your thoughts on that and how to improve it, and what are you seeing in some of the young props coming up through the ranks now?
Yeah, I think with the amendments to the scrum laws and so on, and I think they have been very positive for the game. And what we're now seeing is these young athletes being strong, powerful, but the better scrummagers have a fantastic level of mobility and great core strength. So it's being able to have control as you move through the sequences. So from the crouch, because there is such little space between you and your opponent now, if you start in a poor position and maybe your pelvis is not in a neutral position and you're slightly rounded in your back, you've got very little time to correct that through the movements. So players that can move well, coupled with good core strength, physical strength, are sort of leading the way of the standards. So it has become very technical, understanding those sequences. But it's like anything, the more that you practice them, the more fluid the movement comes, then you're able to adapt to oppositions during the game, adapt to the referees calling sequence and so on.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely the dark arts in that front row, isn't it? But moving on, just looking back over your playing career, some of the players you've sort of played against or trained with and stuff like that. Who are some of the fittest players you've been involved with, or who are some of the best trainers that you've trained with?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, really good question. I think people of late, I think someone like a Darren Fox works very hard off the field, and again, it's testament. I think he's still playing nowadays. Yeah, he was a fantastic trainer, athlete, and so on. And I think that's probably more of the shift of where the game is going. And again, it's credit to professionalism is that the more you can invest in your athletic development, and as I alluded to before, that's your core strength, your mobility, as well as your skill acquisition. It's those players that rise to the top of the game, and then you couple that with the mental aspect of the resilience, the grit, and so on. And so I've been fortunate to play probably through two generations of when I first started. The game had not that long gone professional, so the sport was learning its way within professionalism and finding its feet, and now being a coach within that environment, you can see through being involved with the game for 20 years how much it's evolved with the understanding of sports science, nutrition, how we recover, and even into the aspects of how we learn. So I know it doesn't quite answer your question with who the best, but I think it's hard to say that because it's evolved so much over time. But someone that comes to my mind would be a Darren Fox, definitely.
Yeah. And like you say, you mentioned Foxy, and he's still playing now, and that's testament to the fact that he's looked after his body. And if you do that, if you make that investment from a young age, you're going to have a long career, and that's what we want, because essentially it is a short career, so you want to make the most out of it that you can. So
yeah,
definitely.
And probably to sort of add to that again, and we know that Foxy's had injuries throughout his career, and I think that's where if an old ex-rugby player like myself could pass on any advice around that, is that being diligent with your rehab and your prehab and so on is one of the keys to that longevity in any sport. And it's not just once you're fit again that you then stop doing it. Someone like Darren is really diligent at making sure all those niggles and old injuries he's got exercises to help him to manage that, and that's a testament to why he's been able to play for so long.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of on that note, you're kind of alluding to it anyway, but what advice would you give to an upcoming player?
I think it's a great question. What advice would I give to them? Think about why do we play the game? We play the game because hopefully we play it because we enjoy it. There's that pursuit of mastery of the skills, of challenging yourself to perform under pressure against an opponent and so on. And I think our sport is very special with that, being a team sport where your teammates rely on you. It's very special. So my advice would probably be to just enjoy all of that. You've got to remember to enjoy all of that. And yes, everyone's got drive and they've got goals and they want to get to a certain point, but just just remember this is a moment in your life, and not to forget living the rest of it. And if you're a young player that's aspiring to get into the professional game, well, it's remembering your studies, as we both know it is a short career. So it's what are you going to do alongside that? And again, there's a lot of research out there that people that are successful in one sport have got a well-rounded life, and they've got other interests, not just solely focused 24/7 on that sport, because there will be highs and lows, and you need to have different outlets and different stimulus. So I'd say it's important that, again, it's being encourage you to be well-rounded, enjoy your sport, love your sport, chase the mastery of it, and push yourself to see how good you could be, because the competition comes from within. It's not you against your club teammate that is vying for the same position. It's what I've learned. It's about you pushing yourself, so when you have an opportunity to play and perform, it's the levels that you can achieve that's the drive. What then your teammate has to try and better those, so you get that competition, but the real competition comes from within. How good can you be? How far can you push yourself?
Awesome, yeah, some great advice there. Okay, Dan, so we've obviously talked in depth about throwing and what weaknesses of throwers and how they can improve that and stuff like that. And I know you've got a product or some products coming out that might help with that. And obviously you're a coach, specialist throwing coach in your own right. So just talk us a little bit about that and let people know sort of how they can get in touch with you as well.
Yeah, well, I've put together an ebook called The 5 Steps of Lineout Throwing, and the idea came about in 2015. I was invited out to Argentina to deliver one of my throwing courses for a week, and it was a fantastic experience. And I worked with these young players, and fast forward 4 years, I was invited out again, and I now see the next generation of players that are now representing their country, and have learned to throw from the program that we put in place all those years ago. And it was a real humbling experience to speak to a player that's throwing and that has come and said, "Oh yeah, I've watched all your training sessions," and so on. And it was just, I felt that I've been privileged enough to play the game at the highest level, and I wanted to share that knowledge with people, so that players that want, again, to chase mastery of a skill, there's now avenues out there for you to go and do that. And I don't think there's much out there regarding throwing, so I made the ebook. It's available in English and in Spanish, for all my Argentinian followers on social media. And again, it's the tips and the techniques that I've identified over my playing and coaching career, as a guide and a map for others to go and develop their own technique. Because I mean, what I would say is that the 5 steps of line-out throwing, again, it's a guide, and it's about, because we're all different shapes and sizes, and we might have different injuries or mobility or so on, it's a framework and a guide for you to go and tailor it to your own physique. But as I'm aware, there's very little out there for players to learn that. So I felt it was an opportunity for me to do that and share my knowledge.
That's great. And I think it's similar in terms of Rugby Renegade. What we do, obviously, you know, if you're a professional player, you get one-on-one coaches with someone like yourselves. But if you're amateur or coming up through the ranks of clubs, you don't kind of get that. And we provide S&C and sort of medical rehab, prehab stuff, and you're going down the skill route. So it's good. It's just giving the masses opportunity to get exposed to what elite level players have. So I think it's brilliant. Do you want to talk more about what's involved in the ebooks, or just let us know how listeners can follow you on social media or get hold of you on the website and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, my website is thescrumdoctor.com, and I post helpful tips around throwing techniques and scrummaging on my Instagram page, which is drichmond2. And as I say, if you're interested in buying the ebook, that's at my website.
Yeah, and is that out now?
Yeah, that's out now. That's ready to go. So launched it this week. And again, the structure, the format of the ebooks is there's videos of myself explaining the techniques and so on, and some how-to tips and some explanations of what to look for and what to avoid.
Awesome. That's great. And of course, we will share all links to your social media and to your website. But yeah, thanks for coming on, taking the time to talk to us. I know you're sort of in between coaching sessions and stuff like that, so appreciate that. But yeah, I think it's great what you're doing, and definitely will recommend it to any hookers on our program to check it out.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, mate.
Cheers, Dan. So great chat with Dan. Definitely plenty of takeaways if you're a hooker or a prop. Especially check out Dan's ebook if you are a hooker, to improve your line out throwing, whether it's technical or from a physical standpoint. And of course, share this podcast with any of your front row friends, and they can listen to it on SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, Spotify, whatever you listen to your podcasts on. And of course, give us a 5-star review, and check us out at rugbyrenegade.com or any of our social media platforms at Rugby Renegade. Until next time, more podcasts to come.
Thanks for listening to the Rugby Renegade Podcast. For more quality rugby strength and conditioning information, check us out at rugbyrenegade.com. Rugby Renegade, building machines.